The story begins with a battle, a necromancer standing on the stage of a brutal arena. The necromancer unleashes his creation, a monstrous corpse named Hector, sending it charging forward with burning rage. The opponent calmly responds, commanding a grotesque creature with long, twisted fingers to strike back. The corpse launches a strike, its tongue lashing out from its mouth in a vicious attack. These magicians aren't ordinary spellcasters, they're necromancers, masters of death who raise and control corpses to fight in savage duels. Their creations are called knights, and these violent clashes have become the greatest sport of the era. Among the roaring crowd sits a young boy named Useu. His eyes are fixed on the fight, filled with awe and admiration. To him, this wasn't just a show, it was a dream, a glimpse of what he hoped to one day become. After 17 years pass, Useu, now grown, lives in a rundown house. The roof leaks and rats scurry across the floor. In the center of the room lies a corpse on a table, its chest glowing faintly. Useu chants a spell, carefully channeling energy into the body. Therefore, a crystal begins to form in the corpse's chest and the air starts to pools with immense energy. The corpse slowly rises. Despite that, a thin crack suddenly splits across the crystal. Because of that, the light dims and the energy drains away. Therefore, the corpse collapses into lifeless dark state. Another failure. Frustrated, Useu leans back and mutters to himself, he's back to square one again. In the days that follow, he juggles random jobs just to survive, fixing things, cleaning, anything that pays. After one long shift, he walks home while reviewing some handwritten notes. Because he's distracted, he doesn't notice someone call out his name. Before he can turn fully, a monster's fist slams into his face, knocking him to the ground. The monster's master, another necromancer, steps forward. He mocks Useu, reminding him that he told him to leave the city. He calls him trash, just like the garbage heap he was born in. His insults cut deep. He even mocks Useu's father, saying he was trash too. The cruelty doesn't stop. He reminds Useu that he doesn't even have a knight to his name. But Useu doesn't stay silent. He stands up, bloodied and tired but defiant. Clutching his notebook tightly, he says that he's not trash, that only he can decide who he becomes. Still, the necromancer orders his monster to pin Useu down and gives him one last warning. Leave the city, or next time he won't just be hurt, he'll be destroyed completely. No matter how someone is born or raised, the only one who can decide what kind of person they become is themselves. The first person to say those words was the necromancer Rhal. He came from a poor slum, an orphan with nothing. He entered the War of Corpses alone and achieved an unmatched record of 6 straight wins, becoming the most famous, ultimate human in the world. Useu wanted to be like him. Even just once in his life, he dreamed of becoming the best, of being acknowledged by everyone, of hearing the applause of the whole world. But then in Useu's home, a shadowy figure loomed in the darkness, throwing insults with a sneer, each word laced with contempt, reminding him again and again just how worthless he truly was. In the necromancer material shop, Useu walked through the rows of strange supplies. He came across a woman's corpse lying off to the side. Curious, he asked the shopkeeper about the human-shaped material. The shopkeeper explained that it was a bit special. It had been put on the market about a year ago and had already been sold 13 times. But each time, no one could get it to move, so it was returned again and again. Useu then asked why it hadn't hardened and broken like most failed materials usually do. The shopkeeper replied that sometimes, once every few years, these defective ones show up and stay intact. Since they were going to throw it away anyway, the shopkeeper offered to sell it at a super cheap price on the condition that it couldn't be returned. As Useu observed the corpse's knuckles, he asked about her hands. The shopkeeper told him that she used to be a very famous mercenary in her lifetime. People said she could smash anything with a single punch. But then he added that a knight is just a tool. It doesn't think and it has no ego. So who she used to be doesn't really matter, right? Useu thought for a moment, then declined the offer, saying that a defective product that failed 13 times was too big of a risk. The shopkeeper said he understood, then added that trash is just trash after all. Hearing that pushed Useu over the edge. Angry and determined, he bought the material using every last bit of money he had. He didn't even have enough for food tomorrow, let alone rent for next week. He thought this might be the end. The chance of success was almost zero. But still, for some reason, he wanted to try with this one. He told himself that no matter what anyone else said, they could do it, they would become the best together, and one day receive applause from the whole world. He began chanting. A burst of energy exploded from the house. The corpse creation had succeeded. Then the corpse opened her eye and asked who he was. Useu was stunned. He screamed, grabbed a butcher's knife, and questioned how a corpse could speak. In an instant, the corpse noticed the weapon in Useu's hand. Energy began to gather around her fist, then she lunged, aiming a devastating blow at him. The shadow from before reappeared, mocking Useu's dream. It called him trash, saying that even his life and his mother were worthless. No matter how much he struggled, he would never be acknowledged by anyone. Suddenly, Useu jolted awake, screaming. His breathing was heavy, but he quickly calmed himself, thinking it was all just a dream. After all, corpses couldn't talk. That's when he heard a voice from the shadows. The corpse, now sitting there, told him he should consider himself lucky. Her right leg wasn't working, or she wouldn't have missed her punch. Useu fell back in shock, realizing he was tied to a chair. The corpse woman looked straight at him and demanded he explain what he did to her body. She warned him not to test her patience. Next time, she wouldn't miss. That's when Useu noticed the damage her earlier punch had caused. After a while, she started to understand what had happened. She had died and come back to life. She thanked Useu for reviving her but told him not to show himself again. She tried to leave, but Useu stopped her. He explained that she couldn't move her left arm and right leg, those parts weren't originally hers. Then he showed her that he could control them. As a necromancer, he had to move those parts for her. Without a second thought, she grabbed the butchering knife and sliced off her leg. Then she stood tall on one foot, declared her name was Eleonora, the strongest and most beautiful warrior in the world. She turned to leave again, but Useu called out to her. Since she had been a mercenary in life and had sold her own corpse after death, it seemed like she needed money badly, so he offered to hire her and asked her to fight for him. She replied that as long as the pay was good, she didn't care about the risks. She would never turn down the job. She had a debt she absolutely had to repay, more serious than he could ever imagine. Useu calmly asked, would 80 billion gold be enough to cover your debt? She agreed that it would, but asked how he planned to get that kind of money. He showed her a poster for this year's corpse war. The prize money, 100 billion gold. He asked if she was interested. Since she was technically a corpse knight, entering the competition would be easy, as long as they hid the fact that she was actually alive. Eleonora agreed, then she immediately started bargaining. She demanded 95% of the winnings. Useu tried reasoning with her. Considering all the costs like materials and support, he offered 85%, but she didn't budge. He pushed it to 90%, thinking she might bend, but she didn't flinch. Eleonora held her ground, still asking 95%. Eventually, he gave in. The moment he agreed, she asked him to write up a contract. She didn't trust promises made with just words. Time passed and the two began practicing how to walk together. It wasn't going well. Eleonora said he was moving too fast and complained about the strange mask she had to wear. Useu explained the rule: when using human-shaped materials, at least 80% of the face must be covered so no one could recognize them. He reminded her again that no one could know she was truly alive. Just then someone called Useu's name. It was the same woman who had beaten him up earlier. She reminded him of the warning to leave the city she gave before. Her eyes landed on the knight beside him and she insulted Eleonora, saying the knight looked like trash just like Useu, ugly and pathetic. She laughed, saying it would be more fun to watch him get crushed in the competition. Then she started walking away, saying she would let him go for now. Out of nowhere, Eleonora commented, says the one who looks like a skin tag. The necromancer heard that and wasn't about to let it slide. Useu quickly whispered to Eleonora to stay quiet, but it was too late. The damage was done. Instead of calming things down, he doubled down, throwing another insult that only made it worse. Furious, the female necromancer sent her corpse knight to attack. Without hesitation, Eleonora entered battle mode and charged in. The two corpse knights clashed instantly, both aiming to land the first punch. Kalina was a necromancer with a fair amount of talent, nothing exceptional, but more than enough to place her above most. With moderate effort, she achieved moderate results. That was her rhythm, and she used those modest accomplishments as a way to look down on others, especially those who struggled harder yet stayed beneath her. It gave her a sense of superiority, her greatest joy in life. In that sense, someone like Useu, who despite being a so-called piece of trash worked tirelessly yet remained below her, was the perfect prey, the perfect toy. Emphasis on was. Back in the present, Kalina stood frozen, her eyes locked on the scene before her, her own corpse knight completely obliterated by Eleonora's attack. Kalina and her companion were both stunned, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. Useu, standing with quiet confidence and a mocking tone, asked if she had a problem. But Kalina, gripped by fear as she stared at Eleonora, found herself speechless. Later, in a narrow alleyway, Useu scolded Eleonora for fighting outside of the tournament. He reminded her that it was strictly prohibited, but Eleonora showed no regret. She told him not to order her around. Regaining his composure, Useu clarified, it wasn't an order, it was a request. He then reminded her that he was the expert when it came to the War of Corpses and that she should remember the debt she needed to repay. They couldn't afford unnecessary risks. At the registration site, Useu demonstrated his corpse knight's movements. Eleonora moved clumsily, her motions stiff and unrefined. Still, the examiners approved the entry. While it was obvious she barely passed the basics, they needed participants to fill the lower ranks anyway. Later, Useu stood proudly in his necromancer's uniform. He'd waited 17 years for this moment. As he adjusted the fabric and spoke with Eleonora, an announcement echoed across the facility, summoning all players to the arena. Soon the massive arena was filled. Necromancers, strange corpses, knights, far more than anyone expected. Everyone stood, waiting. Then a deep voice rang out across the Colosseum. It spoke about names, how they lasted longer than flesh. Bodies withered, bones turned to dust, but a name could outlive it all. Some names might only echo for years. Others would live on for centuries, even millennia. In this cruel and glorious battlefield called the War of Corpses, the speaker hoped that such a name would rise again, a name that would never be forgotten. The voice addressed the full gathering, 304 necromancers. It challenged them. Were they ready to enter this war, to offer their very souls, to carve their stories into eternity? The arena answered with a roaring cry of resolve. And with that, the announcement came. The 145th War of Corpses had officially begun. The crowd exploded with cheers. The energy shook the ground itself. The battlefield trembled under the weight of anticipation. Then came the explanation for the preliminary round. It was designed to spotlight new players and give them a chance to be seen. The format was clear but brutal. Every necromancer would be matched at random. To advance, one needed 2 wins, but with 4 losses, they would be instantly eliminated. The first matchups were decided by positioning. Anyone standing on the black lines would face the person directly behind them. Useu stood on one of those marked lines. He turned slowly to see who was behind him. A man stood there tall, with a massive corpse knight towering beside him. The man looked at Useu and spoke. He asked if Useu thought he looked ugly and disgusting. Then he declared that he would show Useu the ultimate form of beauty, something he had created himself, and he promised that Useu would acknowledge it. Useu replied to the man behind him, explaining that he had been looking at his corpse knight. He mentioned it looked well made and began praising the design and structure of the knight, complimenting its craftsmanship. Then he confidently stated that even if it was a strong knight, he still intended to win. He wished for a good match and reached out for a handshake. The man accepted it and commented that it was the first time someone had offered him a handshake. It surprised him that Useu didn't seem to care about his face at all. The preliminary rounds of the War of Corpses began. The tournament would go through 3 rounds, and only 1,000 players would advance to the main round. The rules for each preliminary round changed every time, making it hard for participants to prepare in advance. Before the fight, Useu handed Eleonora a communication device. He had modified its appearance slightly. If she wore it on her ear, it would allow them to talk within a 300-meter range. The device was designed to transmit sound at a steady volume using resonance magic, so only the wearer could hear it. Eleonora tested it by covering her mouth and whispering, and Useu confirmed that he could still hear her clearly. Eleonora then asked if communication checks wouldn't catch something like this. Useu explained that the competition valued the individuality of each necromancer, so accessories like this were generally allowed. Also, since the arena was sealed with a strong magic circle that blocked outside communication, their device was allowed. It only worked inside the field, not outside of it. The match began. Useu walked up to the platform while Eleonora stepped into the arena. Since it was only the preliminary stage for unknown participants, the stands were empty. No crowd, no cheers, just silence. The overseer gave brief instructions to both sides, then raised a hand and signaled for the battle to begin. Eleonora dashed forward to attack, but stumbled and fell. It was clear they weren't synchronized. One of them was too fast while the other moved too slow. They couldn't coordinate their movements. Eleonora quickly said she'd go with her own style and told Useu to just keep up. Without waiting, she jumped straight toward the enemy knight. The opponent's knight looked like a frog, but it didn't give her a chance. It leapt away. Useu reminded her that the key to victory was destroying the opponent's knight core, which looked like a red bead. At the same time, they had to protect their own knight's core. Their strength lay in a powerful single-hit attack during close combat, but they had very few defensive options. So he suggested they start by carefully analyzing the enemy's attack patterns. But Eleonora disagreed. She said wasting time would only give their opponent more space to plan, which was a disadvantage for them, especially since they couldn't even run properly yet. Then she rushed in again, trying to close the distance, jumping toward the frog-like knight. But again, the frog knight kept dodging. Useu watched carefully. He noticed that Eleonora wasn't trying to coordinate with him at all. She kept charging in with only one functioning arm and leg, which made her slow and easy to predict. But something else caught his attention. The opponent's knight wasn't attacking. It was only running away. Then Yuzu's eyes shifted to the frog knight's back. There were strange round objects attached to it. The opposing necromancer spoke. He said, "Is that all you've got?" Then he explained that sometimes strong players hide among the unknowns, so he took time to observe. But now, he decided Useu wasn't worth the effort and said he would end the match. One of the orbs on the frog's back popped up, revealing a human-like face. The necromancer proudly announced that he had created the ultimate beauty. Eleonora asked Useu if faces weren't supposed to be 80% covered. The necromancer explained. He said it wasn't a normal human face. It was a face he had developed through years of research, a result of carefully calculated proportions. It was, according to him, the most ideal and perfect form, his version of beauty, and because it wasn't the face of any real person, he said there was no rule requiring it to be hidden. He had told them to witness its beauty just before it exploded. The frog knight's face began to contract inward, a clear signal of an impending attack. Useu recognized it immediately that it was an explosive. He called out for Eleonora to dodge, but it was already too late. The creature launched its face, and the blast erupted right in front of her. It was revealed that Useu had taken control of Eleonora's arm and forced it to explode just before the enemy's attack made contact, sacrificing her arm in the process. Eleonora asked if the enemy necromancer could also control the face. Useu explained that any body part separated from a knight couldn't be controlled and would only stay active for a short time, meaning the bomb's trajectory would always be a straight line. He also added that the explosion seemed to be caused by a mix of enzymes from poisonous amphibians, the kind that only detonated upon strong, sudden impact. Eleonora understood that all they needed to do was dodge. The frog knight fired another shot, which she swiftly avoided. As she moved, she admitted she was starting to enjoy the fight. Another shot exploded near her feet, throwing her backward. The frog continued launching explosion after explosion, and then jumped high into the air, releasing 3 more face bombs. Eleonora dodged them, though she struggled to run properly. Just as another face bomb appeared before her, about to strike, Useu used his control over her leg to launch her away from the blast, saving her once again. Useu then told her they were at their limit. If she couldn't run properly, they had no chance of winning. He had been analyzing their lack of coordination, and the biggest issue was trust. Her right leg, which wasn't originally hers, existed physically but not mentally. It was only natural that she kept leaning away from it, which threw off her entire balance every time she tried to run. He told her to trust him and stop focusing on that leg. But Eleonora replied that she didn't trust comrades who didn't risk their lives with her. She was the one fighting out there, not him. He was just flicking his fingers from a safe distance, while she was the one putting her life on the line. More explosions came, and again, she was thrown back. That's when Useu told her this was his last chance. He had been born in a garbage dump that everyone despised. Labeled the son of trash, he grew up constantly looked down upon, especially because of his so-called father. He spent his entire life being ignored. No one could understand what it felt like to live knowing every part of himself was seen as worthless trash. Then the shadow from his dreams appeared once more. He said he couldn't go on unless he proved to that man, and to the entire world, that they were wrong, that he could become the best. If he failed, he had no reason to live. Meeting Eleonora, he said, was the only chance he had left. He wouldn't ask for her trust, but he begged her to trust in his desperation. At that moment, another attack flew toward Eleonora. She turned and started to run, finally shifting control to her right leg and moving properly. Useu noticed the change. She wasn't holding back anymore. She was trusting him. Eleonora made it clear not to get the wrong idea. She didn't care about his past. He had already saved her twice, and now she was simply betting that he would do it again. Then she began running again, leaning into her right leg. It wasn't perfect, but that didn't matter. Even if her stride wasn't ideal, it was enough to dodge. With fewer than half the bombs left on the frog, they held the upper hand. Without those bombs, it was just a big toad. The frog knight kept attacking, but now Eleonora dodged with more ease. Her movements became quicker and more controlled. Even when one bomb came dangerously close, she managed to avoid it. The necromancer opponent grew nervous as Eleonora dodged every attack. Useu began counting how many bombs remained. Bomb after bomb, Eleonora skillfully avoided them all. Then Useu told her that all the bombs were gone and the frog was empty. Ready to strike, Eleonora gathered energy in her fist and moved toward the toad, but just then the toad leapt over her. At that moment, the necromancer revealed a secret. The frog's body held 10 spare bombs, kept just in case. Suddenly, all 10 bombs launched from the frog, raining down around her. Useu told Eleonora not to aim her attack upward, but to strike the ground instead. Without hesitation, she followed his instructions and launched her ultimate attack at the arena floor. The force of her punch, combined with the frog's face bombs, triggered a massive explosion that destroyed the entire battlefield. The opposing necromancer was stunned, completely taken aback by the sheer destruction caused by his opponent. As the dust settled and the arena lay in ruins, Eleonora commented that Useu's judgment had been efficient. He explained that with the power behind her punch, he figured the shockwave and debris from shattering the ground would be enough to trigger the bombs without direct contact. A flashback revealed a conversation between the two. Eleonora had explained that this technique could only be used once per match. It required her to pour everything she had into her fist, and afterward her arm would turn black, taking about 4 hours to recover. Useu then asked what would happen if she used the move again before her body had recovered. She explained that she had used it twice in a row once before, and that's how she died. Her corpse at the time had lost an arm, a leg, and had a large hole near the heart. That was the result. If she pushed it again, her heart would explode and she'd die for real. Back in the present, Useu pointed out that while their strongest move was spent, the same was true for their opponent. Eleonora grinned. It was time for a true warrior's bloody, close-quarters fight. She charged forward. After a fierce exchange of blows, she landed a clean strike to the Toad Knight's heart, destroying it and instantly turning the creature to stone. The match was over. Player Useu was declared the winner. After the fight, Eleonora and Useu stood together. Useu commented that she had fought incredibly well, completely dominant in that final close-quarters exchange. He said she truly was the ultimate warrior. As they talked, Useu spotted the necromancer standing nearby with his defeated corpse knight. He walked over and praised him, saying it was a magnificent knight, one that showed clear effort and passion. But he added, his own knight had been just a little more perfect. The necromancer seemed surprised. He said it was the first time anyone had called his creation beautiful or truly recognized his work. Useu nodded and pointed out one thing that felt off: the face used for the bombs. It seemed designed to meet other people's standards of beauty. But beauty, he said, was both objective and subjective. Instead of trying to please others, wouldn't it be better to express the kind of beauty the necromancer saw himself? The necromancer was taken aback, admitting he had never thought of it that way. He smiled and said it was a good idea. Then he told Useu that he would become his first fan, watch him rise to the top, and one day create an even more perfect, beautiful knight to surprise the world. Back at their home, Useu casually started calling Eleonora Ellie. He explained it was more efficient. She immediately objected. He wasn't her friend and no one had ever called her that. But after some back and forth, they made a deal. He could call her Ellie, but only during fights. I'll also call her Ellie from now on, just to make things easier. Ellie asked about their next match. Useu explained that necromancers are given a week to rebuild their knight. The issue was that opponents are assigned randomly. Then he showed her the skull he always wore, explaining it's an ID card that proves he's a necromancer. Every necromancer has to wear one, and their skull's color and shape reflect their tournament ranking. The ranking structure begins with rank 7 black, designated for first-time participants or those eliminated in the second preliminary round. Progressing upwards are rank 6 bronze, rank 5 silver, rank 4 gold, rank 3 diamond, rank 2 emerald, and rank 1 ruby, indicating increasingly better performance. The pinnacle is rank 0 onyx, awarded to the champion. Each rank is associated with a specific skull icon. Don't worry, I'll remind you the ranks when they matter. The higher your rank from previous tournaments, the tougher your opponent tends to be. Since matches are random, a rank 6 bronze might face a rank 3 diamond, or even a rank 2 emerald if they're unlucky. Useu opened the envelope and froze. The name inside hit him like a shock. As he did, the scene shifted to a luxurious room. A man sat in the shadows while his assistant read him the name of his next opponent, Useu. The man didn't recognize the name. There was no information available. It seemed this was Useu's first time participating. The man brushed it off, saying this preliminary round would be easy. That man in the shadows was revealed to be a rank 1 ruby. In the last tournament, that meant he placed somewhere between 10th and 2nd. The scene shifted to a man standing in front of hundreds of thousands of cheering people. It was player Rhal, the impregnable wall, winning his 2nd consecutive championship. Countless fans were sharing that glorious and honorable moment as the stadium chanted Rhal's name. Rhal stood amidst it all, reveling in the crowd's cheer. Suddenly, the scene changed back to Rhal in the present, still wearing the ruby skull. He called for Sophie and asked about the number of fan letters he had received this month. She told him it was 1,244. He then deduced that it was a 15% drop from last year, and asked what the media and analysts were saying about his chances of winning first place this time. She told him that the average from 13 media outlets and 43 analysts estimated his probability of winning at 2.736%. Filled with anger, he declared that he would prove to them that the impregnable Rhal could still win. Then he asked about his opponent, Useu. Sophie explained that since it was Useu's first time, there was no data on him. Rhal said his victory chance was 99.74%, since a first-time competitor wouldn't be able to counter his techniques. He declared that to increase his chances of winning again, he needed to show everyone the overwhelming difference in power so no one could deny it. The scene returned to Useu and Ellie. Useu said that Rhal was not an opponent to ignore. He placed 10th in last year's competition and had won twice before. Then he explained there were only two ways to determine the winner and loser in the War of Corpses. The first was to destroy the opponent's knight's heart, and the other was to forfeit. Forfeiting didn't just mean surrendering, it meant giving up on the entire War of Corpses. Only results up to the forfeit match were recorded, and the next match wouldn't happen. Those who forfeited also received a lot of criticism. Ellie commented that it was crazier than she thought, basically a fight until one of them died. Useu explained that a knight was just a tool, but for her, having her heart destroyed meant dying for good this time. Then Useu asked Ellie what she wanted to do. Thinking he was suggesting to forfeit, Ellie said she had lived her whole life killing wildly to repay her debt. If she wanted to win, she had to defeat these guys eventually. Risking her life twice was nothing. She told him never to forfeit without her permission. He agreed, saying he hoped she would say something like that because this was his last chance too. He added that they had to prepare for a fight that might be their last. At the arena entrance, Rhal stood hyping himself up before entering the arena, signaling his entrance. Ellie commented on how many people were there even though it was just the preliminary rounds. Useu said it was because Rhal was a champion. Rhal's corpse knight appeared and it was massive, a giant wall-like creature. Useu explained that it was a combination of various materials and living beings, forming a living wall and shield. So far, its outer layer had never been breached by any attack. In fact, if someone attacked it carelessly, only their own weapon would be damaged, putting them at a disadvantage. No matter how strong her punch was, she wouldn't be able to break through. They had only one chance, so they needed to somehow strike the main body hidden behind the wall. Ellie remarked that it should be easy. If it was that big, it had to be slow. But as Useu began to explain why the wall was truly terrifying, because of its overwhelming size, the wall suddenly shifted and dropped toward her, massive and unstoppable, cutting off any path of escape. Useu, seeing Ellie about to be crushed, quickly used her left arm to fire a hook-like appendage. It latched onto a point outside the wall's range, and he pulled her away like a makeshift Batman grappling gun. He commented that the arm was necessary, but since it was made from cheap material, the performance was lacking. Still, it functioned as a biological grappling hook, capable of closing a distance of about 5 meters. Seeing the wall monster momentarily flipped, they thought it was their chance. They used the hook to approach the wall quickly, and Ellie charged her right arm, preparing to launch an attack. But Useu stopped her, reminding her that no one had ever broken that wall. She deactivated her attack just in time, only to be slammed straight into the wall. The wall then began breaking itself apart to move more freely. Useu commented moving a knight was like delicately sensing and coordinating every tiny capillary in another person's body. Tensing the gastrocnemius pulled the Achilles tendon, lifting the heel. Failing to control the erector spinae meant losing upper body balance. The more varied the parts and the bigger the body, the harder this became. It was well known that moving large knights carried massive risks. But Rhal could not only move the wall, he could break it into pieces and control them individually. Useu had never seen Rhal move like this before. It was clear Rhal had come prepared. With focus and determination, Rhal declared he would show overwhelming power and activated his technique, Crushing Zone. The broken wall pieces began forming a giant box, aiming to trap Ellie inside. Once trapped, it would be over. Useu acted quickly, using the grappling hook to pull Ellie out of the trap. Without giving her any time, the wall broke apart again, attempting to trap her once more. They used the hook to evade and run out of the trap. Useu and Ellie searched for an opening. Spotting a brief gap, Ellie fired her grappling hook, latching onto the wall and pulling herself to the top. But the trap quickly reconfigured, shifting its shape in an attempt to trap her again. Rhal responded immediately, commanding the wall to collapse inward, aiming to crush her between its moving parts. Meanwhile, Useu tried to use his own hook to help them escape, but with limited visibility, he struggled to grab hold of anything. Time was running out. The wall was closing in fast. At the very last moment, Useu managed to anchor the hook and yank Ellie free, pulling her out just before the structure collapsed. The rescue succeeded, but the grappling hook shattered in the process, destroyed by the strain. Useu stared at the wall, thinking how overwhelming it was, how it seemed completely unbeatable. But in that moment he realized something. maybe there was a way to break through. He told Ellie that no one had ever succeeded, but also no one had ever fought while considering this one condition. Was the wall truly unbreakable? He recalled that once, a long time ago, a knight with a physical attack specialty had managed to crack it in a last-ditch effort. Since then, everyone who had tried failed without even leaving a scratch, and attacking the wall head-on had become an abandoned tactic. But what if they could deliver the single strongest attack in the world, stronger than that knight? Then maybe, just maybe, it was possible. Useu turned to Ellie and asked if her fist could surpass that wall, if it was the strongest in the world. Excited, Ellie began preparing for her ultimate attack, declaring that it was worth risking her life. Useu told her the location of the main body, about 45 degrees from his position, and that he'd mark it with her left arm. Then he told her to go for it in one shot. Ellie focused, gathering every ounce of power into her right arm. Rhal, watching from the other side, was shocked and shouted that they must be insane to face his wall head-on. He activated his compression chamber technique, sending wall segments to collapse onto Ellie. But she dashed forward with everything she had, and aimed her final, strongest punch straight at the main body. Ellie's punch broke through the wall, piercing it cleanly. Rhal watched, stunned, unable to believe what had just happened. For the first time, his supposedly impenetrable wall had been destroyed. The crowd was silent for a moment, frozen in disbelief, before applause erupted across the arena. Shock turned into excitement, and the audience celebrated the incredible fight they had just witnessed. Useu stood still, eyes wide, taking in the cheers and letting the sound of praise wash over him. After the match, Useu turned to Ellie, asking if she had heard the applause. She responded with pride, believing that she had proven her fists were the strongest. Useu agreed, acknowledging that they had accomplished something no one else ever had. As the two stood in the arena, the door behind Useu opened. Rhal walked out, calm and composed. He offered a warning, stating that the public would be more eager to focus on Useu's mistakes than his accomplishments. According to him, people would always be more drawn to failure than success. Useu responded with unwavering confidence, showing a hopeful and fearless attitude that reminded Rhal of his younger self. With a small parting comment, Rhal made it clear that he would not go easy on Useu the next time they faced each other. Later at home, Useu and Ellie split their prize money for passing the first preliminary round. For Useu, it was the first time he had ever received money in recognition of his necromancer title. Since they had both won twice, they had officially cleared the first stage. Only the prize money from this round was subject to their contract, so Ellie encouraged him to enjoy it. When Useu asked about her plans for the break, Ellie pointed to her left arm, nodding that she wouldn't be going anywhere with her current body. In response, Useu asked her to wait. After a short time, he modified her arm and leg. It was designed to resemble her original body as closely as possible. Though not perfect, they were crafted with care. He also brought her a set of casual clothes and explained that if she wore them, she could pass as a regular person in public. He encouraged her to get dressed so they could go out and enjoy the city together. Since they earned the money as a team, it was only natural to spend it together. Ellie, slightly confused by his energy, was surprised by how he could occasionally come across as charming. Outside her room, Useu waited. When the door opened and Ellie stepped out, he was completely taken aback. She looked natural and striking, enough to leave him blushing on the spot. Drop a comment with your thoughts, and if you're into recaps like this, hit subscribe.